Hey there, are you a high achiever and a professional that's feeling stuck in what I have called for years the neutral zone? I'm Carole Naismith, and I'm a lean performance coach dedicated to helping ambitious professionals break through those invisible barriers. In today's episode, I'm going to dive into three critical problems that often hold you back. That frustrating place, that where you're in limbo and you're trying to figure out what you're capable of to do more and what is holding you back from getting what you want to achieve. And by the end of this episode, you'll have a tactical roadmap to restart your professional momentum. So let's break it down and see what we're going to do. So, the first problem, often, at least that I see, is that you feel lost. You feel like you don't have the earning potential. You might be looking for a career. And I bet you what's going through your head right now is, well, I work so hard. How come no one's noticing me? Well, it takes more than just someone noticing you. There are certain strategies that you have to put in place. And of course, some of the hard work in order to make sure that you can quantify and make sure that that comes out. One of the areas that would help you is really knowing your own self, right? And so I call it the energy mapping technique, where you identify your personal productivity rhythms. I've been doing that for years. If you journal at all, or if you say to people, if you ever find yourself saying to people, please don't schedule a meeting at 3 o'clock, that's the worst time of the day for me, then that is an example of a personal productivity rhythm. That happens to me, actually. I'll tell someone if they really want a good decision out of me, especially if you have like a direct team that you're working with or some really good business partners, you might want to tell them a little bit about your working style and let them know that the best time to reach you or the best time to have a meeting, of course, if it's feasible, is to meet with you at a certain time of the day. And obviously for me, mornings, if someone wants to meet with me mid-morning on, but certainly the worst time of the day for me in that example is around 3 o'clock. And that's just where maybe my sugar is low. I need to go take a break, walk around. So that's kind of an example of a personal productivity rhythm. The second one I'd say in there is where you want to align where your peak performance windows are. So if you're a morning person and you want to get up and do your best, most productive work, then I would recommend putting some focus time aside, especially in your calendar. Certainly for me, it's not just the thought of doing work in the morning, it's how you're going to carve that time out, protect that time for yourself, and make sure that it is something that you are certainly making sure that you can get the best out of you. And then, of course, the third one is really to create a personalized productivity matrix. So I have an example of that. If you want to sign up for that matrix, just click in the show notes below, and I would be happy to send you a template that you can use that will help you with that productivity matrix. So, some of the things that you want to do once you've got that productivity matrix pulled up is to really take a look at what your habits are, right? You want to track that for a little while, maybe take 30 days, take a look at what that will do for you. I would take a look at the whole start stop cycle. This is where you're going to do really hyper focused on your goal setting. Take a look at what the daily actions are that you're doing to plan towards those goals, and take a look at some reward mechanisms that you can personally put in place that are going to help you, along with built-in flexibility. And let's face it, you're going to have to give yourself a little bit of grace during that time. So what are those protocols for yourself that you want to make sure that you have? The third problem I thought we would talk about today is the mental overload. When you find yourself wanting to have that growth mode. So when I said this podcast sometimes is for high achievers, a lot of times high achievers are like large consumers of podcasts. They do a lot of reading, consumption of learning and growth, but sometimes it can get overwhelming, right? I mean, so this is where you have so much information. Now, what are you going to do with that? It's certainly great that you're learning and that you're consuming more information. Now, how are you going to apply the practicality of it all? Is that something that once you've learned it, that you're going to sit down and say, all right, here's how I'm going to take two bite-sized pieces from that book or that podcast and test it? Test to see if it works. Sometimes it will and sometimes it won't. Really depends on, again, if I go with what we started with, is your energy rhythms, your personality style, your work style. But I would certainly, make sure that you are setting yourself up for success, and you try it for a 30-day period and see if that at all changes your success rate. So the part I said about making sure that you give yourself some grace, sometimes life takes over and that can certainly throw you off guard. But you're going to have to find methods to get back on track because sometimes you can let that go just a little bit too long. So, one of the areas that certainly can get in the way, especially if you're a high achiever, is taking a look at your own skill development and how that can actually cause for sometimes a state of confusion for yourself. So, what are the strategies that you can put in place so that you are using the best of those sort of new learnings and putting that in place? So, really, if you think of the problem that that may cause for you is just sort of an unclear path for professional growth. You're sort of grasping at, places where you're going for learning. It could be online learning, audio books, a physical book, a class that you're taking. And a lot of people sign up for these things and then find themselves overwhelmed. It's probably because of borrowed time and borrowed budget. So, one of the things I'd like to see you do with your productivity matrix is that you really identify where you have complementary skills. If you were to put it in a quadrant and say, all right, like what are my top skills by which people recognize me for, right? So that could be your I would say more your very natural place by which you really do performing work, stellar work. People know that you are competent and high achieving in that area, and identify that. And then you can also put a section on this quadrant that sort of stands out and said, what part of that is it that I just absolutely love doing? When I come in and I hit and get into the zone of doing it, it is like gives you euphoria, place where you have euphoria. And there's a very big difference between how you feel when you're doing something like that to something where you're absolutely the best person. You can get the stuff done like the back of your hand. You're absolutely highly productive. There's a difference between doing that and the stuff that you are, when you are doing it, you're in your absolute place of joy. And then the last one I'd say is really building out your professional capabilities. If you're finding yourself in that place of stuck and you're trying to figure out where your next professional aspiration will take you, then one of the things that I ask is that you really carve out some of your capabilities and put them down. Often you'll hear those as sort of soft and hard skill sets, things that people look for. If you're applying for a job, they'll often sort of want to take a look at both of those. And so happy to share a prompt with you that using ChatGPT or some sort of AI tool. So let's break it down a little bit. And here's what I'm going to do. So the first one is really that whole professional being stuck syndrome, right? It's that idea that you feel stuck without any really clear progression. It's that place where you are in your career where you feel like the momentum is lost, you've reduced your earning potential, and you just sort of feel like you're gliding along. Sometimes some people might say that you're in your comfort zone, but it's not that really. It's where you're feeling like you want more, but you're just not able to make it there. So the way I look at this is that you're going to create yourself a personalized productivity matrix. And if you click on the show notes below, there's a link down there where I'll be able to supply you an example of what that looks like. And I'm going to have you fill that out. So just click on the show notes below. Oftentimes you'll find yourself, multitasking. And if you're doing that right now, well, come back to me because that's what I hear often. And so if you're not focusing or feel you can do 2 to 3 things at a time, you're going to have to help rebuild some of those formation of habits and try to get yourself in a place where you find yourself super consistent. So the first thing I would say is that whole stop cycle of your personal development. Think about what you're doing. Yes, I want to try that, or I'm going to take this course, but then you don't do anything with it. Well, that's what's called a stop cycle. And I've been there. Trust me, I've taken a course. You think you're going to be able to use that, and then you never implement it. And so one of the things that action becomes reaction. So some of the impact when you do the stop cycle is that it impacts where you're and what you're doing with your skills. It's also a motivation drain. So I don't know about you, but if you get up and you're like, shoot, I wish I was going to do that, or I said I was going to start that last month, and that can get under your mindset, right? So you don't want to be doing that. So I would suggest a 30-day micro challenge framework. And so if you sign up for that and you click on the show notes below, this is where it's going to help you really zone in on how to do micro goal setting, something that can help you do bite-sized chunks of what it is that you want to achieve. It's something that will help you with some daily actions and how to get that on your calendar. and to build in some rewards in there for yourself. But I also want to say that a place where you can give yourself some grace too, because if you happen to fall off course, I'm going to help you with how it is that you can get back on it. Often, if you're a high achiever and you're listening to a bunch of podcasts and audiobooks and you're, trying to take a course, it can be very overwhelming. And so your mind just gets stuck with all these thoughts and ideas. So the impact of that, though, is that you're missing the opportunity to implement what you're learning. And so I would say that one of the things that we're going to want to put in place is, how to stack up your skills in a way where you can really identify what your complementary skill sets are, how you're applying some of the new learned methods that you're brought on board and sort of putting that into your matrix and sort of build your professional capabilities. And then taking a look at that and saying, it's not just, hey, I took a course and you put that on your resume or tell somebody. It's, how do you implement action? So if you're a mid-level manager and you're feeling plateaued, or if you're an entrepreneur seeking that next breakthrough, I ask that you take a look at some of the strategies that we're going to put out there. And I am looking forward to working with you.